So I just finally got confirmation that food stamps is officially cut for next month.
About 2 months ago, I stopped eating dinner almost every night of the week so that my boyfriend and I could have enough food left over to have lunch the next day. This was before we were about to lose our food stamps. Mind you, we both work.
I don't think that we really realize the depths that the damage that this is going to do, but the women, the mothers, and the families, but the mothers especially, who are going to go without meals so their children don't have to. I know that I will absolutely be one of those mothers.
But because we have children and because aftercare and before care is too expensive, I've taken a job that's basically minimum wage so that I can be there to pick up my kids. I cannot fathom what we're going to do without that food stamp money, because if I already couldn't eat dinner with that food stamp money...
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Tea and Toast with Ghost. I am your titular host, Ghost with the most. But anyway, everybody, before we get this show on the road, let me pour the tea, baby. Now that our cups are full, ladies and gentlemen, let us get into today's topic. And today's topic is particularly SNAP fraud. Now, I can hear a few people questioning, Ghost, why are you doing this so late? Well, to make a long story short, busy season at work. This is something I do kind of as a hobby, half serious, kinda. But, I also got sick, so in the end, it just kind of plays out this way. But anyway, now let's talk about, why are we talking about welfare fraud? Because SNAP falls under that. Well, I'm not going to talk about Medicare, Medicaid fraud, because that is its own video. And then what about welfare deposits and all that? That's another form of fraud that is technically speaking, both are grossly abused. And the government, technically speaking, does nothing about it because of many different reasons, including politics. But let's start off here. The U.S. government, federal, annually spends $1 trillion in welfare programs. This is everything. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all of it. All wrapped up. $1 trillion, folks. Can you feel the debt eating at your paychecks? Because I can. I can feel it pretty darn good, folks. I'm not going to lie. Now, let some of the ladies speak for a moment, shall we?
So I am a single mother to two incredible daughters.
But the women, the mothers, and the families, but the mothers especially, who are going to go without meals so their children don't have to. I know that I will absolutely be one of those mothers.
There would be very little hope of how to cover every single bill, every single necessity that comes from just being, a person in the world without the extra support of the SNAP benefits.
Bruh. Yeah, look, I get it. Life is hard, especially if you're a single mom. You know what I mean here, folks. Oh, geez, do you understand what I mean here? It's just so sad. But in all seriousness, folks, I'm not trying to belittle this woman. I'm really not. But sadly, her failure in at least trying to keep a relationship with her children's father. Now, this is assuming that they have the same father. Yeah, shocking. And of course, now she's a single mom.
You let him hit it wrong. You didn't have second thoughts. Now you a single mom. Now you a single mom. You said I'ma have this kid. Don't care if he's here or not.
But, you know, I do have some sympathy because no one wants to hear about hungry, starving children. I do get that. But this is what happens when you rely on the government teat. And what happens when that teat stops working or stops producing? Well, oh my gosh. We got drama central, folks. But I have a question for you. And this question is not, oh, how can I belittle these women? No. What is the origin of welfare here, folks? I mean, seriously, think about it. What is the welfare origin? What is the origin of the welfare state here for a minute? Like, didn't we used to believe in manifest destiny and who needs the government? You have to be self-sufficient.
The very beginning of the welfare system was the passage of the aid to dependent mothers early in the New Deal. And you know what? It was perfectly reasonable. What did they have in mind? Frances Perkins was Secretary of Labor at that time, and she had in mind widows. Widows with small children. And they needed help. What is a more natural object of our affection?
When the stock market crashed in 1929, the world entered the Great Depression. After his election in 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt instituted federal reforms to help the poor, including cash assistance for single mothers.
With 20% unemployment in America, massive public works projects strengthen families by providing employment in a difficult time.
I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people.
Roads, public parks, dams and bridges were built, tying work directly to assistance. But even President Roosevelt realized that there was a limit to what the government could do.
President Roosevelt certainly said often that welfare was not intended to be for a lifetime and not intended to replace work. And to the extent that we've gotten away from that sentiment in some of our programs, that's unfortunate.
The lessons of history, confirmed by the evidence immediately before me, show conclusively that continued dependence upon relief induces a spiritual and moral disintegration, fundamentally destructive to the national fiber. To dole out relief in this way is to administer a narcotic, a subtle destroyer of the human spirit. We must preserve not only the bodies of the unemployed from destitution, but also their self-respect, their self-reliance, and courage, and determination.
It all started out so innocently. And if I'd been alive then, I would have been in favor of it then. But it ratcheted up very slowly. Even by the end of the 1950s, the welfare rolls were small, the amounts of money were small. Welfare really was not, at that time, an attractive way to try to live.
Roosevelt remained true to his convictions and phased out emergency public projects as the economy improved. From the 1940s to the 1960s, poverty fell dramatically in the United States.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Welfare started out as social programs to put people back to work because of the nature of the Great Depression and all that jazz. Great. I mean, that's great and all. But it was primarily to help war widows, women whose husbands died during World War II or just before it would have been World War I and just before World War II. So how do we get from it needs to be temporary, it's going to put you to work, to this?
So I got a letter from DHS today. They're trying to tell me that I have to sell my 2024 Range Rover that I just bought. Okay, I put $10,000 down on this car, my dream freaking car. And they're trying to tell me if I don't sell it, because this is considered a big asset, if I don't sell it, get rid of it, I will lose my $4,000 in food stamps, my $2,000 in cash assistance, my Section 8, my disability, and my kid's disability. So pretty much, if you are on government benefits, you can't drive nice things. You can't have nice things. They literally want me to sell my car, my Range Rover, that I have wanted all my life.
What? So let me get this straight. You're getting $2,000 in cash assistance, $4,000 in food stamps, plus you're also on disability pay. Quick question, is this rage bait? I mean, seriously, this could be rage bait here. I'm not gonna lie, folks, but you're getting what? At bare minimum, $10,000 because you're also in control of your kids' money here? What in what world is this okay, folks? I mean, seriously, let's ask this question. In what world is this okay? So here's our timeline as it was, as you can see here. We got before World War I, World War II, then there comes the New Deal, then, expansion in the 60s and 70s, and the reform. Where did we go from, let's just help the war widows, to, here, let's just fund people's lifestyles here, folks? I mean, again, this could just be rage bait, but $10,000 to one woman with who knows how many kids? And, maybe she's a single mom and she has a crap ton of emotional damage. So, I really do think we need to get back to the original here of maybe a year or two, not someone living off the government teat. Now, as I was doing my research, I came across not many studies, many articles, and this study here about how government is, not government, excuse me, how people treat people on welfare versus people who get corporate welfare. Now, corporate welfare here, they're saying, is the grants and loans that you get from the federal government here. Well, hold up. Wait a minute. If a business starts and it gets a grant to start the business, that is free government money. But, here's the premise. If you're given $10,000 to start a business, and let's say you've got another $40,000 saved up to start that business, or maybe you get a $40,000 federally backed loan, well, if your business becomes profitable, doesn't that mean you eventually have to pay back those loans? And if not, you eventually pay the government back in taxes? So, isn't it in government's interest to get that back? But if you're a woman who's not working, the government gets nothing back? So small businesses that start, or corporations that start, businesses that turn into corporations that eventually pay taxes. Why wouldn't a government want to fund that? Because later they get to tax that at whatever the rate is, and guess what? They get to collect. Sounds like business and keeping the tax revenue going, if you ask me, folks.
Up until the 19th century, up until the effort to establish a laissez-faire free market society, all previous existing societies in Europe, but around the world, have always subjected economic production and exchange to social and moral and religious regulation. And there's a reason for that. Basically, economic profit making is not the most important thing in most existences and most people's lives. And societies have always been concerned to ensure that where markets exist, where exchange and profit and trade is ongoing, that shouldn't be allowed to leave people destitute, throw people out of work, undermine the religious and the moral institutions and commitments of the organization. So the long-term story is it's always been normal to have the social regulation of the collectivity on the economic action of its manufacturers and producers. The exception to that long-term history is the effort to establish a liberal, laissez-faire free market society, and that ended in disaster. Basically, it ended in producing the mass unemployment of the 1930s and the collapse of democracy, fascism, Nazism, communism. All of these were the result of a century-long effort to establish a free market society. So the lesson of the Second World War, the lesson of the collapse of democracy, was basically that if capitalism is to be made compatible with human life and social flourishing and well-being, it has to be regulated. It has to be regulated in the collective interest by the state. And the welfare state's the outcrop of that. It's only recently where the welfare state established 3 decades of prosperity and growth and productivity that people began to think maybe we could do without it, maybe we could return to the free market. And I think that the disaster of 2007, 2008 reminded us of how short-sighted that was.
Now, I can agree with a couple of his sentiments, but beyond that all, I hear a couple people saying, well, Ghost, you haven't brought up any fraud. Well, it's not that it's not there, it's just hiding in plain sight, as a matter of fact. So, if you recall, this lady from earlier in the video was complaining about having to sell her brand new car or she'd lose $4,000 in food stamps, $2,000 in cash assistance, disability checks, and her Section 8. Yeah, that does sound like it sucks, but let's ask a basic question. She's on Section 8, which basically means she pays nothing for her rent. She has a couple of kids. So, yeah. But here's the question I have. How much is that Range Rover worth, folks? Well, according to the MSRP value in front of you, directly from Google, she bought, at bare minimum, a $100,000 car, assuming that she didn't buy it new. Assuming she bought it new, that's a lot of money. So now I can hear a few people saying, well, how is this fraud? Well, let's see. She's on disability for something. We don't know. It could be a physical thing. It could be a mental health thing. We don't know. But let's be realistic here. She's getting $4,000 in food stamps. She's getting $2,000 in cash assistance. Plus, she's getting disability payments for herself and her children. So, I would say at least $10,000 a month in assistance. Explain to me how this isn't fraud, folks. That she's living off the government teat, and she's bemoaning the fact that she can't have a nice car. Well, considering that said car is worth over $100,000 brand new, kind of makes the government say, I'm not paying for your lifestyle. I'm paying for you to eventually get back on your feet. This is the fraud. Now, we could sit here and say anxiety disorder, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to sit here and rag on her health issues. But what I will say is, how is this not fraud? And as a quick sidestep back to the video we just watched, I do agree with him. You know, we need to get off the welfare, but we don't know how.
Maggie Aragorn has been a SNAP recipient for more than 3 decades. Even with these benefits, she says she also relies on food banks to get enough.
Now, I know that little clip was making fun of that woman, but 30 years on welfare, yes, but more specifically, SNAP. Quick question. How much money has the government give this woman in just SNAP benefits? You know, this isn't including Social Security disability. So let's start off, because I adjusted for inflation here. $173. This is from 1990 to 2000. Times by 12. That's how much you're getting for the year. $2,076. Now we multiply by 10. And we get $20,000, almost $21,000 from 1990 to 2000. So now we go to 2000 to 2010 adjusted for inflation. And we get 150 times 12. That's $1,800 times by 10, because we're going from 2000 to 2010. So that's $18,000. And then they raise the prices. So 300 times 12, 12 months in 1 year. That is how much you get in 1 year times by 10. So that's $36,000. So $36,000 plus the $18,000 plus the nearly $21,000. And a single woman who's been on, excuse me, who has been on SNAP benefits has incurred nearly $80,000 in 30 years. Now, I can hear a few people saying, well, Ghost, that's not too bad. Okay, now take that number and multiply it by millions. And if you don't want to consider that for a minute, you know, that's one person. We're not including people who have families, because then the numbers are different here. I mean, look at that. One person gets that. 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. And some of these people don't even have disabilities. I mean, the woman from the video, as far as we know, she doesn't have any disabilities. She's just sucking off the government teat. So, you know, in reflection here, what do? We have to go back to the original principles here of maybe you're on it for a year or 2, but that's it. No more. We do any more, and we're going to bleed out our own money for our country here, folks. That's our solution. But in any case, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, bang that bell, and I'll see everybody in the next video.